Tonight on TBN, the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles are set to play in the Super Bowl this Sunday. TBN Zara Zuanto holds a Super Bowl preview show with 4 guest panelists breaking down their key plays and game predictions. The Department of Performing Arts showcased an experimental production of Carol Churchill's Love and Information, a show that the Advanced Acting and ATP class have been working on since September. Down at 11 Cedar Street in Dobbs Ferry, Joy Thaler runs a new sustainable chocolate shop, The Pod. Thaler takes TBN through an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at how her chocolate is made. All this and more next.
Good evening and welcome into the Tower Broadcast Newsroom. I'm Hannah Schijano.
And I'm Carol K. Ross, and we're following and recapping all the latest news. This Saturday, the Masters community gathered together to cook and share meals from all around the world in the annual International Dinner. Check out this photo slideshow recap.
The Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles are set to play in the 57th Super Bowl this Sunday. TBN's Zara Sabanto hosts a Super Bowl preview show with 4 guest panelists.
Good evening and welcome to the TBN Preview Show. I'm your host Zara Savanto and today I'm here with 4 TBN analysts.
Baird Ruska,
Felipe Queiroz,
Alex Howe,
Charlie Cooper.
Thank you so much for being with us here today. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get right in. So other than the QBs, what player do you think is going to be the most valuable for the Chiefs and for the Eagles?
I'm thinking Hassan Reddick for the Eagles. He's been a complete game wrecker for the Eagles the past 2 games and the whole season, 16.5 sacks. So I'm looking for Hassan Reddick to be the one to change the game.
Who do you think is going to have the best defense?
Yeah, I kind of hate to say this, but it's probably going to be the Eagles. Just like how dominant they've been all year. Especially what Charlie mentioned, the defensive line is pretty outstanding. You got guys like Sweat, Reddick, Fletcher Cox, who's like incredible. Yeah, and then their secondary, like it's kind of an insane talent pool.
You guys talk about the Eagles having the better defense, going to have the better defense. Do you think they're going to be able to stop Kelsey, considering his undeniable connection with Mahomes?
I think it's kind of impossible to stop him this year.
Yeah.
Just because if you watch him, the way he plays is he doesn't beat people with speed. He doesn't beat them even though he's a physically dominant guy, he doesn't beat them with physicality. He's just an incredibly smart route runner. So I don't think he's a guy you can't really game plan for.
I think Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are just unstoppable. And even though Patrick Mahomes might be a little bit injured, he still played phenomenal.
I think the problem for the Eagles is going to be containing Patrick Mahomes. I mean, no one in the NFL can contain Patrick Mahomes. You think you got him, he's going to make a magical play, especially with Kelsey always being open and always being physical like that. So I feel for the Eagles, the hardest part on defense is going to be stopping Patrick Mahomes.
You guys both mentioned them getting the QBs being injured, both Jalen Hurts and Mahomes. Which one do you think is going to be able to pull out and have the best performance?
Mahomes has had a better passing season than Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts tends to rush the ball a little bit. He has been a phenomenal QB, but I think Mahomes definitely has the better stats.
I think both quarterbacks will be I don't think the injuries are going to really be a big story in the game. Hurts, that was maybe 6 weeks ago by the time of the Super Bowl, maybe even 7. So I'm not worried at all about his injury. And Mahomes, 2 more weeks, sprained ankle, that's the type of injury that, no, it looks pretty bad, but he's going to be able to, he's not going to limit himself. He's going to go out there and give his all.
And when we're talking about head coaches, Andy Reid has been a head coach in the NFL for 25 years now, and Nick, the head coach for the Eagles, has only been it for 2 years, especially considering Andy was the head coach for the Eagles for 15 years, and now he's over with the Chiefs. Do you think the lack of experience is going to affect that?
Andy Reid does have winning experience. With the Eagles, he went to multiple NFC championships, plus he even played in a Super Bowl, and he won a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes too. So I feel like that winning experience will come in hand, especially because he's been with Patrick Mahomes for almost like 5-6 years now. So I feel like that experience will come in hand, but I think both teams are really good, and I think both teams are coached really well. So I don't really see the coaching be one of the huge factors that will make one team better than the other.
Andy Reid is a really special coach, especially in Philadelphia. He had a lot of success. But I look back to the Super Bowl 52 where the Eagles had Doug Peterson as their head coach, first time in the Super Bowl. It was his second year as a head coach. And his creativity and fearlessness in the game was what led the Eagles to a win, and I expect the same from Sirianni.
All right, so now for the obvious question, who do we think is going to win the Super Bowl, and why?
This is incredibly painful for me to say, but I think the Eagles are going to pull it out. I just think talent is just incredibly overwhelming, especially on the defensive end.
The Chiefs, honestly, have had a phenomenal season. Same with the Eagles. It's for sure going to be a close game. But at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is more experienced than Jalen Hurts. And I think after Tom Brady retiring, I think he needs to solidify his place as a best quarterback in the NFL.
I think Patrick Mahomes will seal it for the Chiefs. So just by experience alone, I have the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl.
As a diehard Eagles fan, I don't really know how I can go any other way. I got the Eagles winning 28-20.
I agree. I definitely think it's going to be a close game. I want the Eagles to win, but I guess we're going to see what happens. I mean, either way, the Kelsey family is going to come home with a trophy. So thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. Back to you, Hannah and Carol.
Thank you so much, Zara, for that incredible panel. And now here's a $1 million question for you, Hannah. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl?
Well, I'm going to go with the Eagles. Both teams, both the Eagles and the Chiefs, have recent Super Bowl experience, with the Eagles in 2018, Chiefs in 2020 and 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So they both know how to deal with this position, and I think it's going to be a good game. Unfortunately, I like the Jets. They came up a little bit short this year.
A little bit short?
A little bit short, but I think next year is going to be the year where the Jets win the Super Bowl.
All right, well, you heard it here first on TBN. Next year, next Super Bowl is the Jets for the taking.
That's right.
But in other recent sports news, Masters recently partnered up with Local Live to broadcast all of our varsity basketball games. TBN has commentators for all of these games, so make sure you stay tuned for that. The Advanced Acting and the Advanced Theater Production classes recently showcased an experimental production of Carol Churchill's Love and Information, presenting scenes they've been working on since September.
What if he comes around here and says the police are onto me? What am I going to do? Can you help me?
You're making things up. Yeah!
The Advanced Theater Projects and Advanced Acting classes collaborated to produce the play Love and Information, originally written by Carol Churchill. Students began production in September and performed in the experimental theater on January 12th and 13th. Love and Information represents how society is overloaded with information. The students performed 45 scenes covering themes such as identity, memory, and love.
We did so much preparation, and I memorized it so well that I wasn't really nervous. I was a little nervous the first night, but the second night it was just a lot of fun playing and getting to work with people I'd never worked with before.
We had like one Sunday rehearsal with the 2 acting classes together, and it was a very intensive, 6-hour rehearsal.
The Advanced Theater Projects class included only 4 students who did the casting and logistics, while the larger Advanced Acting class worked mostly on scene work. The play was performed in traverse, which features the stage in the middle, with the audience on the sides facing one another.
Throughout the show, I was looking at the other side of the audience to see everybody else's reaction, and that was a really interesting aspect that I'd never really seen before in a show.
It was my first acting experience at Masters, so it was a little daunting for the first time to be in the middle of the audience.
The play transitioned quickly, and while there was no opportunity for clapping between scenes, there was frequent laughter from the audience.
I think the most challenging part for me was was getting all of the cues, because like the whole thing just, it like never stopped. It was just like a continuous, like ongoing. There were no cuts.
There were definitely points when I like wanted to like take out my hands and start clapping, and I kind of had to restrain myself. It made it more continuous, and every scene kind of like flowed into the other one.
Masai commented on the support from her fellow cast members.
They've all been very welcoming and encouraging throughout like the whole experience of love and information.
Gaines talked about what acting means to her.
I think it's very therapeutic for me. After a scene, I always kind of feel less tension. It kind of just helps me process stuff. So it's really important to me. I can't wait for everything else we're going to do.
Hannah Scujano, TBN, The Masters School. Carol, you were in Love and Information. What was it like being a part of the play?
I think that this production was one of the most creative and experimental productions I've ever seen at Masters in my 4 years here and I've ever been a part of. I really commend the Department of Performing Arts for taking such bold and creative artistic risks, because that's what theater is all about. And it was just such a joy to be a part of.
Well, next up, on Monday, TBN premiered a special MLK episode covering the day's events at Masters, as well as the preparation by students and faculty. In case you missed it, here's one of the segments on student-run workshops.
Masters' MLK Day was a large success this year, in no small part thanks to the student planning efforts that went into it. Members of both the middle school and the upper school gathered in the Fonseca Center gym to watch student performances and listen to several different speeches relating to the day's theme. Dr. Roland Davis explained the importance of the day's theme, as well as the role that student planners had in coming up with it.
The theme for the day, Not Done, was the idea that came from a student during one of our committee meetings as we were brainstorming about what possible themes could be. And through the course of that conversation, a student threw out this idea of this work not being done. And without question, everybody sitting around the table said, absolutely, that's it. That's our theme for the year.
Students worked to plan the event ahead of time, create engaging workshop ideas, and refine those over time, create presentations for the morning, and oversee the day's schedule and programming. Davis further explained the importance of student leadership, adding on what they provided behind the scenes.
So Mr. Douglas had convened a committee of the MLK Day Planning Committee, and that was made up of students and faculty. And we didn't get as early a start as we had hoped to this year, but we still, I feel like, had plenty of time for student involvement. Students got to look at the schedule and offer input in terms of what the logistics would look like for the day. Students reviewed the workshops, the lists before they were approved, so they had a sense of what the workshop opportunities would be. So yeah, I think students did have a chance to weigh in and be directly involved in the planning and execution of the day.
Elijah Brooks, a junior and co-chair of SCHEME this year, spoke on his experience operating behind the scenes.
For me, what I did in MLK Day was I gave a welcome, short little welcome, 2 minutes at the start. But my role, to be honest, was more like an observer in seeing it. And to be honest, I really enjoyed MLK Day this year. I thought the speaker was very informative. Not only informative, it's just the way she connected technology and race was unheard, and I feel like she really brought her expertise to us that day. Also, the workshops, I was in 2 workshops actually. I was in Black and Beauty, and I was also in AAVA, African American Vernacular English. If I got this much out of it, and I'm myself a person of color, I can only imagine what other people got out of it. We are learning something new, something different today. That's very important.
Brooks further explained the process of creating a presentation for the morning.
The process for it was actually very nice. We met after school, and then we talked over what do we want the school to take away from our 2 minutes, even though it's very brief. What do we want the school to take away? And it was just once again the community norms, and also some of the little bits that we added in there, we're very welcome to have everybody today, but as a remembrance that today is not just a remembrance, but it's also a process. We're here to build, we're here to grow, we're here to cultivate a community that is better for not only just like people of color or PWI, but for everybody.
Junior Gabriel Tamako spoke on his experience leading a workshop.
My workshop was about, it was the oppression by government and also just general that transgender people face in the United States today. Well, I started off by telling the history of transgender people in the United States, multiple different, and also how African Americans have had a large impact on that community. I also then moved on to current day topics such as political persecution, laws made against them, and then I went into a question and answer type thing.
The workshop leaders chose their topics based on their expertise and the issues they felt were relevant to our world today, taking on Masters' mission to be a power for good in the world and contributing to the day's success. For TBN, this has been Xavier Ralston, the Masters School.
To watch more TBN coverage on MLK Day, be sure to visit tower.mastersny.org for the full special episode. After a 2-year COVID hiatus, the Winter Review is back at Masters. This year's production was Broadway Junior's Raise Your Voice. Xavier Ralston reports.
This year's Masters Main Stage musical review, Raise Your Voice, performed in the Experimental Theater on January 27th and 28th. This was the first time Masters has put up a musical review in 3 years, and unlike years past, Raise Your Voice was an entirely student-directed performance. Senior Lorelei McCarthy and junior Charlie Gaines both stage managed the production. The director was Eden Leach, a senior who performed in the review back in 2020. Leach described their experience directing for the first time.
I hadn't realized that I was the first until after it already started. I think in part it didn't register because it's not the first student directed production. Yeah, definitely a bit anxiety inducing and surreal, yeah. I'm so proud of them. I think at least almost every person got sick at some point in time, which meant a lot of making up work and not a ton of time. So I'm so immensely proud of them. They're all so amazing.
Leach also commented on their future in directing.
I think it's definitely something I want to try again in the future. I think generally, I want to make theater a bigger part of my life than it has been, but I think directing this production has definitely fostered a lot of self-growth, and I think this is definitely something I would want to try to do again in the future.
Students who performed in Raise Your Voice praised Leach's work and expertise, and felt they had grown from Leach's leadership. Freshman Ash Trahan described their experience performing and what they got out of this opportunity.
It was actually really fun. I think when I got in, I was really worried because I think that there was a lot to learn, but we did it. I'm glad to see how far I came, and I'm obviously so proud of everyone in the cast.
Freshman Annette Choi talked about how the performances went and the pride she and other cast members felt following the performance.
I feel very proud of our team because we had only 2 months to do this and there were a lot of sicknesses and stuff. So the way that we were able to come together now and be able to perform this in front of an audience was really made me emotional, and I think it went pretty well.
Audience members left the show full of joy.
Oh my God, it was so good. I especially seeing from the beginning, you saw oh, these kids have been working on this for such a long time, and then finally getting to see the end result, and it was just spectacular to watch. It was so fun.
Xavier Ralston and Matthias Jalen, TBN, The Masters School.
Thank you, Xavier, for that story. We shared 2 archival projects from students in the broadcast journalism class in our last TBN episode. Tonight, Hassan Saad shares his project on the history of the dorms at Masters.
Hi, this is Hassan Saad at Strong Dorm. This is my archival project.
Masters boarding community existed for a very long time, when Masters was still a girls-only school. This video is about the students and their experiences. I spoke with Sujuta Jagi, a former student at Masters and the current head of the alumni committee, about her time as a boarding student.
I started as a boarder in 1999, the fall of 99. And I lived in Thompson dorm. I lived in a triple, 2 other roommates, and I really liked getting to know other people, having roommates. My dorm parent was an alum, so it was really nice to have someone who'd gone through a similar experience. Things I like just being around like that group and having a lot of friends.
I asked Ms. Jaggi about some of her favorite boarding experiences and advice that she could share with the rest of us to get a glimpse of how life in the dorms was like.
I went to school at a very different time, so no one had a cell phone. In the 90s, they didn't have cell phones really. And so we had a payphone on our floor, and so like waiting in line so that you could make your phone call to whoever you wanted to, carrying like a big bag of quarters, like movie nights with your friends, trips to New York City. But, we didn't have Wi-Fi either. So you had to like go to the library, and email had just started. So it's like a very different, I think we were like a very tight-knit group because we didn't have a lot of those kinds of personal distractions. So you spend a lot of time talking with each other.
After doing some research in the school's archives, I stumbled on a photo of 3 mysterious buildings that looked awfully a lot like dorms. This is what Ms. Jaggi had to say about these 3 mysterious buildings.
Yeah, so they were on what is now Evans Field, and they were called the Circle Houses. And it was first, second, and third house. And yeah, they were made all out of wood. And I think they pulled them down in 69 or 70, something like that. The new dorms were finished in 71, I think. So the first group was the class of 1972 lived in those dorms.
And this was all. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much, Hassan, for sharing that with us. Finally tonight, as Valentine's Day approaches, we know where to shop sweet and sustainably. TBN correspondent Matthias Jalen gives us an inside look on The Pod, a fair trade sustainable chocolate shop right here in Dobbs Ferry.
Joy Thaler is the founder of the chocolate shop The Pod in Dobbs Ferry. Thaler sells a variety of products like cookies and hot chocolate. Tonight, Thaler takes TBN through an exclusive behind-the-scenes look of how she makes her chocolate.
So hi, I'm Joy, and I'm the founder of Cocoa Compassion. It's a social impact-based business, and we're here at The Pod, which is our first retail location in Dobbs Ferry. And we make bean-to-bar chocolate for the purposes of bringing in chocolate made by cocoa farmers at origin, and we give back 20% for mental health and wellness, and I'm super excited and grateful that you're here today.
Thaler's first step in the process is to put cocoa beans on an oven tray.
Convection oven, we roast it, low roast, which was advised from Jillian in Trinidad. Go slow roast, slow food. And every 20 minutes, we toss it. So now we're gonna toss it. I always lose one along the way. Go back in. So what's happening now? Cracking the bean, and inside there we have the husk and the nib.
After the cocoa bean shells were cracked, Thaler puts everything into a machine called the widower that will separate the husks and the nibs. Thaler then puts the cocoa nibs and a sweetener called panela into the melanger, a machine used to grind the nibs into a chocolate liquid. She then pours the chocolate into a mold that forms the chocolate bars.
So after we poured it into the mold and it dried, it has a shine to it and it should have a snap. So that's, from there, the next step is really going into the packaging. So I'll take 3 bars after I label them. So you have, you have to select a bag. We chose a rice paper bag. We're printing labels right now. So you have to put a label on the front and a label on the back because the cost to do a direct imprint, I still feel is too expensive.
Thaler finally takes us through a look of all of her products.
What do we have? You saw the cookies, and all the products we make here, 20% goes back from local mental health and wellness. We have a new brownie which uses the cocoa powder from Bahia, Brazil. That's from Mission Chocolate. Our marshmallows use local honey and maple syrup versus corn syrup to make them, and they're dipped in the 70% chocolate that's in the tempering machine. And then we have our 80% sipping chocolate, our 70%, our 50%, and then all the other sipping chocolates that we bring in from Origin. So that's the process.
If you want to learn more about the pod and its sustainable chocolate, visit tower.mashesny.org to read the print story now. Matthias Jalen, TBN, Dobbs Ferry, New York.
And that's all we have time for here tonight on Tower Broadcast News. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to Tower Broadcast News on YouTube and follow @Masters Tower on Instagram and Twitter. I'm Hannah Skujana.
And I'm Carol K. Ross. And from all of us here on the TBN staff, have a great night.